name is Mike Solomonov, and I'm the chef and co-owner of Zahav Restaurant in Philadelphia. Zahav is known, well, it's called modern Israeli, but the truth is we cook meat on sticks over charcoal. We cook bread in a wood-burning oven. So we're actually quite primitive. I think that the idea of Israeli food being cooked globally is what makes it modern. I never thought I would be cooking Israeli food. I didn't even think that my connection to Israel would be as strong as it is today. I was born there. When I was 2 years old, we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Woot woot. And, we had a very normal American Jewish life. My little brother was born in Pittsburgh. We went to Hebrew school and didn't learn Hebrew and sort of hated it. And, short of the Israeli isms, it was like having a jar of tchina on the table at all times. Or whenever my grandmother would visit us from Lud, she would make borekas and stuffed peppers for like a month, basically. And then whenever my dad would freak out or my parents had to hide something from us, they would speak Hebrew. But it was a very normal sort of American Jewish life. When I was 15 years old, we moved back to Israel. And sort of begrudgingly, I went to an American boarding school in Pardes Chana that had a Russian program, Ethiopian program, Israeli program, and then a bunch of crazy American kids that the parents had to get out of the country. And my brother went to an Israeli public school and assimilated. And then I was just there for a year. I moved back to the States, not realizing the impact that 1 year would have on my life. I was 16 years old. I wanted to be hanging out in Pittsburgh, which sounds weird, right? So I moved back to Pittsburgh. I finished high school. I attempted college. I screwed that up, wasted all my parents' money, and dropped out and moved back to Israel. And was basically without skills. My Hebrew sucked, which it still does. And I was like an art major with 3 semesters under my belt. So I was unemployable. And I did what most chefs do. They get a job. That's how most chefs are born. They can't really do anything else, and they get a job working in a kitchen. So I got a job at a bakery in Kfar Saba and made rogalach and borekas and challah for 16 hours a day, and I loved it. And then I got a job at a coffee shop making 20 agorot more an hour, and I fell in love with that, and I decided I wanted to be a chef then, at that moment. So I packed up my stuff, I moved back to the States, to West Palm Beach, Florida, and nobody's going, whoop, whoop, West Palm Beach. So I moved back to the States. I went to Florida, I went to culinary school, I worked at a couple good restaurants, and then I moved to Philadelphia, and made Philly my home. I worked for 2 very important chefs. One guy's name was Terrence Fury, and the other guy's name is Mark Vetri. I got a job at this restaurant, Vetri, and loved it. It was a 30-seat Italian restaurant. It was 3 employees, and I got to learn from a master. What was also very cool was that in the nature of Italian restaurant culture, in the summer, he would literally close for 3 weeks, which is not something that really happens in restaurants, certainly not any of mine. And I got the opportunity to go back to Israel, and I hadn't been back in 4 years. I definitely hadn't had 3 weeks off, and I got the opportunity to hang out with my brother David, who was finishing the military. As I was gone, going to school, becoming a chef, all that stuff, David had done what most kids do after high school in Israel. He entered the army. He entered the IDF. He joined the Golani Brigade and was actually a trained sniper. He grew up. We were 4 years apart, and he grew up while I was gone, and I got to come back, and he had a little break because the end of his army service was happening, and I had this 3 weeks off, and we got to spend time together as brothers and to bond. We tried to pick up girls. We went up and down the country, eating and just living, and it was great. I moved back to the States, got right back into cooking. I was now a sous chef at Vetri, and on Yom Kippur, on 2003, 4 days before David's release, he was killed by snipers. He was patrolling the border of Lebanon, and one of the kids in his unit who was observant wanted to go to shul, and my brother switched with him. And as they were responding, I guess, to literally a sensor on the border, 3 Hezbollah snipers in Lebanon fired into Israel and killed David, which sucked. So we went back to Israel and buried David, came back to the States and buried it all under the rug and continued to cook. And on the outside, it seemed fine. On the inside, things were falling apart, and I did not feel at home in Philly. And to be honest with you, I didn't feel at home cooking Italian food either. And it was really difficult. I mean, between just us, I sort of buried myself with substance abuse, and things sort of fell apart on the inside. Less than a year later, on Rosh Hashanah, on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, one of David's friends was he was visiting Philly, which actually means he was like overstaying his welcome, sleeping on my couch for 3 months. And it was one of Dave's first friends from Israel, and it was one of his really good friends, and I couldn't throw him out because I loved him too much, even though he's pissing off my roommates and I. But we were walking on South Street in Philadelphia amongst the bars and the tattoo shops, and we were looking to get our haircuts because we were going to go to his girlfriend's house for Rosh Hashanah dinner. And we go into a place called the Chop Shop that features $10 haircuts. And the receptionist has got a Magen David, and we have to give her our name. And I'm like, oh, I'm Mike, this is Moshe. And she starts speaking to us in Hebrew that's slightly worse than mine. So the worst, right? So we go get our haircuts, we come out, and she says to me in Hebrew, wow, you look a lot more Israeli with a shaved head. And she says, come to think about it, you look just like one of my good friends named David. We were friends in Pittsburgh. And this is a city of 7 million people. So that was pretty crazy. Moshe was like freaking out, and we were both sort of catatonic after that. While that was happening, my love for cooking Italian food had sort of gone away. My love for cooking anything had sort of gone away, and I stumbled upon a job with one of my really good friends, my current business partner. His name was Steve. He owned a little restaurant called Marigold Kitchen in West Philly. It was a tiny BYOB. He was burned out. His wife, Shira, and I actually knew each other from day school, and she introduced us, and he let me cook whatever I wanted. We became very, very good friends, and Israeli food just sort of started ending up on the menu. It was hidden, though. It was like, Yemenite soup, but in fact, it was braised monkfish with like celery root and apple and chawaj, or we did malawach with fresh scrambled eggs and white truffles and that kind of thing. And people were giving us credit for it. People talked about Israeli cuisine, and we were like, man, we should be opening an Israeli restaurant, Not Middle Eastern, not Mediterranean, not Jewish, just an Israeli restaurant. Another insane thing happened while I was at Marigold Kitchen. One of my good friends named Yis owned a restaurant called Shuk at the time, also Israeli, and he called me one day and said, hey man, you gotta sit down, which, if you can all figure out, I sort of hate that introduction on this telephone. Just tell me what it is, let me know what's going on. And he said one of his employees that had finished the military and come to the States was drinking with him all the night before, and they were at Wawa eating meatball sandwiches at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is how most good things happen in Philadelphia. And the kid opened up about one of his really good friends that was American that was killed on Yom Kippur. And it turns out this kid, Ophir, actually served with my brother for a year and a half and ended up in Philly. So naturally, we made him move into my house, and he lived with us for a year and a half after that. These are all things that prior to Dave's death, I probably would have pushed aside, or I would have attributed to coincidence, but it just sort of was. It was easier to accept it. Steve and I opened Zahav Restaurant On May 5th, 2008, which was not a great time to open an Israeli restaurant in Philadelphia. We went through the recession, everything sort of fell apart. One of the owners was a drug addict and alcoholic, which is also not a good premise to open a restaurant. But as things worked, things got good. Things got really, really good. It took a little bit of time. So back to synchronicity, which is the topic of this discussion, which is an incredibly hard word to spell. First of all, I'm going to skip around here. October 6th, 1973, Yom Kippur War. 30 years later, October 6, 2003, my little brother David is killed. October 6, 2008, Esquire magazine decides that Zahav is one of the top 20 restaurants in the country and mentions it by being Israeli. October 6th, 2013, I get to bring a group of chefs and a few other friends over to Israel to do a memorial dinner for my brother on this 10-year anniversary. And October 6th of this coming year, 2015, believe it or not, Zahav's cookbook will be published. Thank you. October 28th, 2008, the last time I pick up a drink or a drug. On October 28th, thank you. October 28th, literally 5 years later, I get on an airplane to lead the brilliant documentary filmmaker Roger Sherman on a film crew that is literally filming the search for the Israeli cuisine, which is to be aired on PBS, which is amazing. It is arguably my life's dream. It's what I was brought here, I think, to do in a weird way. And lastly, so Zahav opened on 2008 in May 5th. On May 5th, 2011, it was Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaZikaron, is Israeli Memorial Day. And a synagogue that we eventually belonged to actually did a big memorial for my brother. The following day, on Israeli Independence Day, in the Lincoln Center in New York, we accept a James Beard Award. So I'm not trying to just get applause, even though I appreciate it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, these things happen, and these have either helped me understand what it is that I'm supposed to do, or help define, or helped motivate. I cook Israeli food because I love it. I cook Israeli food because it helps me connect to the country of my birth, because it helps me represent a country that's often misunderstood, and helps me celebrate a country of people that my brother has died defending.